Among cattlemen, no subject for anecdote and speculation is more popular than the subject of stampedes. There has always been a certain mystery surrounding the stampeding of cattle. Sometimes they stampede without any man's having heard, seen, or smelled a possible cause. The following account of how Stampede Mesa got its name, together with the legend told in many variations of the Phantom Stampede, is current among the people of the Panhandle and New Mexico. I was a mere child when I heard it first, and I have since heard it many times. Stampede Mesa is in Crosby County, Texas, about 18 miles from the caprock of Blanco Canyon, wedged up between the forks of Catfish, sometimes called White or Blanco River. The main stream skirts it on the west. To the south, the bluffs of the mesa drop a sheer 100 feet down into McNeil Branch. The 200-acre top of the mesa is underlaid with rocks that are scarcely covered by the soil, though grazing is nearly always good. Trail drivers all agree that a better place to hold a herd will never be found. A herd could be watered at the river late in the evening and then be driven up the gentle slope of the mesa and bedded down for the night. In the morning, there was water at hand before the drive was resumed. The steep bluffs to the south made a natural barrier so that the night guard could be reduced to almost half. Nevertheless, few herd bosses of the West would now, if opportunity came, venture to hold their herds on Stampede Mesa. Yet, the mesa will never succumb to the plow. Scarred and high, it will stand forever, a monument to the days that are gone, a wild bit of the Old West to keep green the legend that has given to it the name Stampede Mesa. Early in the fall of 1889, an old cowman named Sawyer came through with a trail herd of 1,500 head of steers, threes and fours. While he was driving across Dockham Flats one evening, some 6 or 7 miles east of the mesa, about 40 head of Nestor cows came bawling into the herd. Closely flanking them came the Nestor, demanding that his cattle be cut out of the herd. Old Sawyer, who was as hard as nails, was driving short-handed. He had come far, his steers were thin, and he did not want them ginned about any more. Accordingly, he bluntly told the Nestor to go to hell. The Nestor, being pretty nervy, and seeing that his little stock of cattle was being driven off, flared up and told Sawyer that if he did not drop his cows out of the herd before dark, he would stampede the whole bunch. At this, Sawyer gave a kind of a dry laugh, drew out his 6-shooter, and squinting down the barrel, pointed it at the Nestor and told him to vamoose. Nightfall found the herd straggling up the east side of the slope. On the morrow, the slope would be christened by some cowboy Stampede Mesa. Midnight came, and with scarcely half the usual night guard on duty, the herd settled down in peace. But the peace was not to last. True to his threat, the Nestor, approaching from the north side, slipped through the watch, waved a blanket a few times, and shot his gun. He did his work well. All of the herd, except about 300 head, stampeded over the bluff on the south side of the mesa, and 2 of the night herders, caught in front of the frantic cattle that they were trying to circle, went over with them. Sawyer said little, but at sunup, he gave orders to bring in the Nestor alive, horse and all. The orders were carried out, and when the men rode up on the mesa with their prisoner, Sawyer was waiting. He tied the nester on his horse with a rawhide lariat, blindfolded the horse, and then, seizing the horse by the bits, backed him off the cliff. There were plenty of hands to drive Sawyer's remnant now. Somewhere on the hillside, they buried, in their simple way, the remains of their two comrades, but they left the nester to rot with the piles of dead steers in the canyon. And now, old cowpunchers will tell you that if you chance to be about Stampede Mesa at night, you can hear the nester calling his cattle, and many assert that they have seen his murdered ghost astride a blindfolded horse sweeping over the headland behind a stampeding herd of phantom steers. Herd bosses are afraid of those phantom steers, and it is said that every herd that has been held on the mesa since that night has stampeded, always from some unaccountable cause. I have a tale connected with two of these noted stampedes that I will relate here in the words of Pancho Birol, who told it to me. It was in the fall of 1900. Country was just beginning to settle. I was working for old man Jeff Kester's outfit then, taking a herd through to New Mexico. We'd been on the trail some 10 days, I guess, when we came to a ranch in a valley down on the South Fork. Kester says a friend of his lives there and he rides off. After a while, two boys ride up and tell us they'll herd the cattle while the outfit goes down to the ranch to dinner. When we rode down to the house, Kester and an old man were sitting under a brush arbor that represented a front porch. First thing I noticed about the old man was that one of his arms is only about 2/3 as long as the other, and that he has to put that arm where he wants it with his other hand. We meets him and sets down to wait for dinner, not saying much, but listening some. "You'll have a plenty good places to hold 'em nights, Jeff, but almost the third night out, you'll be somewheres near Stampede Mesa. Don't you try to hold 'em there." "I'm aiming to hold 'em right there, Bill," Kester says. "Now, Jeff, you ain't forgot that stampede in 91, have you?" "Well, maybe you have, but I hain't. I carry a little souvenir that won't let me forget. There was phantom steers in that herd that night. You recollect as how them steers went over the steep side of the mesa, Jeff?" "I must have been a sight when you found me. It's right nigh on to 20 year now, and I ain't moved this old arm since." Well, the wife called dinner just then. The old man got strung out on something else. But that stampede business just stuck in my mind. Along late one evening, old Kester and I were riding a drag when he puts the dogie he's been a-carrying on his saddle down on the ground and says, "'Tain't fur for now. You can walk. We're camping on Stampede Mesa, as they call it. I guess you noticed that feller's arm back there in the valley?" says Kester, jerking his hand back toward the way we come. "Yep," I said, waiting for him to go on. "Well, he got it up there on the south side of that mesa. Hoss went plumb crazy. Bill's always said they was ghost steers in that herd that night. I think I seen 'em too. They just came a-sailing through the herd and right past your horse. I don't believe in haunts, but it was scary. Well, we drove 'em up on the mesa and let 'em graze. A feller and me took first guard that night. The herd settled down pretty soon, but I couldn't get that stampede tale out of my mind. Every time a cow moved, I thought something was going to happen. It was a mixed herd, and they lay as quiet as a bunch of dead sheep. It got so quiet that I could hear my partner's saddle creak away off to one side. The moon set, and it got darker. Just about then, something passed me. It looked like a man on a horse, but it just seemed to float along. Then there was a roar, and the whole bunch stampeded straight for the bluffs. I rode in front of one critter like, and he just passed right on, just kind of floating past me. Then some old cow bellered, and we milled 'em easy. But they wouldn't bed down again that night, and it took every darned one of us to hold 'em. There's some who say that the phantoms of this legend are tumbleweeds, blown by the wind. But there are many honest cowboys who will tell you of the weird calls of the phantom nester and of the galloping phantom steers. Knowing the story, you cannot look at the mesa, branded by the white scar of the old trail, without a strange emotion.